possible, please welcome Malcolm Beecham, who is the CEO of the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, who will be in conversation with Andrew Linian, IA Stewardship, Risk and Tax Director. Welcome.
Thank you, Susanna. Martin, thank you for joining us. Welcome. It's really important that we get to speak to you because the FSCS plays a really important role in the financial services ecosystem. IA members see it as a vital backstop that underpins consumer confidence and an important safeguard. It creates trust in the UK investment landscape. So over the next 20 minutes, we're hoping to cover a range of issues from where the FSCS is now, how you look to evolve it in the future, but also picking up on the themes of the day in terms of actually what is the role of the FSCS in growth, in an increased risk environment, and we might even touch on the levy and actually how you look to manage it effectively so that actually the people that are paying into it are getting value for money. But maybe we can start with, actually, you were interim CEO since October 23, and congratulations, you were appointed permanent CEO in March this year.
Thank you.
I'd like to get your reflections on, actually, where is the FSCS now? What have you done in your interim period, and what changes have you brought about?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here today in this amazing location that you've secured for us today. It's wonderful. So, the time's gone so quickly. I think perhaps it's worth just reflecting on what FSS's core role is. So our job is to enable UK financial stability by providing your consumers with confidence and continuity and compensation when financial services firm fails. And so in that vein, our focus since October 23 has actually been quite straightforward. It's been twofold. Firstly, how do we strengthen the organisation for the longer term? There are a couple of interesting, I think, innovations here that are worth discussing. The first is that we've transformed our advice claims operating model, which is very relevant to everyone in this room. We've pivoted from being an organisation that outsourced the majority of its claims to an organisation that's insourced the majority of our claims. And I think that's very relevant here because that gives us more control over the customer service experience, more control over productivity, more control over knowledge management too. As part of that, we've also set up our own contact centre, which again means we're able to wrap our arms around the customer experience. It's actually brought customer conversations to the very heart of our operations, which culturally is really important for us too. So that was probably the biggest piece of change that FSCS has undertaken in its recent history. And I'm sure, like our experience of change programmes in all your organisations, it certainly wasn't without its challenges, but we're really satisfied with how that's gone, and I think it augurs well for FSCS's ability to deliver future change programmes. The other area where we've looked to strengthen is that we have implemented our digital payments portal, which in the event of a depositor failure means that we can actually get deposits back to customers much, much quicker than we've been able to do in the past through faster payments. So if that's in terms of strengthening the organisation, our second priority since October has really been able to do all of that whilst continuing to implement our core duties. And I'm pleased to say that we've implemented the change while delivering against some pretty challenging targets around our core metrics, which are claims decisions volumes, quality, recoveries, productivity, and of course customer satisfaction. So I'd say we've made satisfactory progress so far, but plenty more to do.
And what is that plenty more to do? What is the vision that you have, and what are you where are you trying to take the organisation, and what's on the horizon in terms of what you need to change and are looking to change?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're currently...
Quite a big question,
yeah,
sorry.
It's a big question. Yeah, and it's very much a work in progress. So we're currently developing our 5-year plan right now. So that plan will start from April 2026. And I think perhaps it might be helpful just to talk about some of the big issues that we're going to need to really face into when we construct that strategy, and you can hold me to account for that when you see the final content. Firstly, actually, we've been able to talk to the IA about some of these emerging themes, and I had the privilege of talking to some of the CEOs from IA members recently, just to get a sense of how the market perceived us, so we could incorporate that into our strategy. So some of the big questions, what is the compensation outlook over the next 5 years, and what might that mean for our future operating model? What kind of incentives do we need to put in place to make sure that we're not only a deep purpose organisation, but we're also a high performance organisation as well as that deep purpose? What level of risk do we need to take in the organisation in order to reflect the risk appetite of the market? And critically, what is the potential for us in terms of our own automation agenda, so we can drive productivity, so we can drive efficiency and be a really responsible steward of the levy for everyone in this room? I think in particular that's going to be a challenge for us, because our work has become more complex over the last couple of years. If we'd have been sitting here, say 4 years ago, and you'd have asked me, just break down the mix of your claims, I would have said, well, 30% are PPI. And they kind of don't really touch the sides, they go straight through. And 30% are complex, like SIPs and pensions. Now, that 30% PPI is down to 3%. And the vast majority of our claims are what we'd call highly complex. So that means we need to bring in new skills. A lot of our calculations are now quasi-actuarial. So we're very thoughtful about how much of that we can automate and how much of the more routine tasks we can automate. So I'm hoping that in a few months' time, we'll be able to have answers to those big questions once we've brought the board along with that thinking, and we can talk about some of the solutions.
Maybe we can come back to some of those aspects of that change, but I'm keen to get sort of your view on the landscape. So we've talked through every session this morning around both growth and risk, and keen to take them separately. But I suppose we've all seen the government's focus on the regulatory family focusing on growth and playing their part in growth. How does the FSCS fit into that debate, and what are you looking to achieve, and how can you demonstrate growth?
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction, because implicit in that actually is something that many people don't know. We are not a regulator.
Yep.
And so we're really thoughtful about how we can contribute to growth, actually, and we're really excited by it. So I think there are 3 areas where we can really make a difference. So the first is everything we do at FSCS is about improving confidence and trust in your markets. And the data actually backs that up. So 86% of customers tell us that when products are FSCS protected, they're more likely to trust and have confidence in the providers of those products. 74% of customers, actually, very relevant for this group, 74% of customers tell us that where a product is FSCS protected, they are more likely to invest and more likely to invest more. So that's highly relevant. So it's very much a case of today's confidence is tomorrow's growth. So as a result of that confidence, that creates stability in the markets, including the markets represented here. And as a result of that, that creates the conditions for growth. So we see a direct line from our day-to-day work to creating the conditions for growth. I think given our focus on UK stability, it doesn't end with these shores, because we're also focused very much on building strong and sustainable relationships with not only our counterparts internationally, but also international organisations as well. It's absolutely vital that the UK has a seat at the top table and in the most important conversations, because obviously that's key to the financial stability here in the UK. I think you've got IOSCO coming in later on, so clearly the importance of international relationships won't be lost on anyone in this room. And the third is very close to home. So what many people don't know about FSCS is we actually have 2 jobs given to us by statute. The first is to pay compensation to customers when firms fail, in the event that customers are entitled to that, of course. And the second is that when we pay funds to customers, we can step into their shoes and try to get the money back from the failed firms in the form of recoveries. And when we do that, the vast majority of that, 88p in the pound, really, as far as the organisations represented in this room are concerned, that goes off to offset future levies. So the more we recover, the more that we can use to offset the levy, and obviously the more funds that releases in the market to invest in growth. So I think they're three very practical things that we do, but I think that most organisations, I think we need to do more than that. So again, I'm very thoughtful about it needs to be more than just the tone from the top. That commitment to growth needs to be cultural at every level of our organisation. And many organisations are only starting to talk about this fairly recently. So how do we make it cultural? And also critically, what are the metrics going to be? So it's great that we can have this conversation about growth, but we need to be very thoughtful about how can we actually justify that through metrics and show that contribution and show that that contribution is increasing over time. So I think they're the areas that I'd point to. Very much a work in progress, but we're up and running.
And will that form part of your strategy in terms of those KPIs and the cultural change at FSCS? Is that on your horizon in terms of near-term steps that you need to take?
Absolutely. So when we think about recalibrating our vision in the past has been entirely focused around customers. And of course, that's absolutely right. That's ultimately our responsibility. But when I think about our emerging vision, of course, it's going to be about being accessible and efficient for customers, but it's also going to be about creating value for those who fund our work, which is a new recognition for us to be so public and to actually be out there, and that will be backed up by metrics. And of course, we also want to be a cornerstone of financial stability here in the UK. So we're adopting a much broader approach, recognising that we need to step into the shoes of those who fund our work as well as the customers that we serve every day.
And are you getting that engagement that you need from the industry? Are they responding to your calls?
Absolutely. I mean, the mere fact that we're here having this conversation is a really generous act on your part, but also a very good sign. Thanks to Chris, I was able to meet with a number of member CEOs recently, and we had some really good, strong, robust conversations which started to tease out what the common ground is between FSCS and the members of the IA. So we've made a good start to that, but again, plenty of work to do.
I'm interested, so you said very clearly that the role that you have in growth and stability and confidence is important to that. How do you marry that with the debate around risk? And a very clear call from ourselves through to the regulators that actually there needs to be more risk in the system. How does the FSCS react to that additional risk, and what approach will you take?
Yeah, I mean, it's very nuanced. So for us, it's all about preparedness and being ready. So we'll all be aware there have been cycles of higher failure in the past, and there have been cycles of lower failure. And at the moment, we're in quite a stable place. So overall compensation has averaged out between 300, 400 million across our entire markets over the last few years. So for us at FSCS, we need to be ready and prepared irrespective of the risk that's in the system, irrespective of the failure that's in the system. We need to be ready. And that's where we really focus our energy. And we do that by working very closely and collaboratively with the FCA and the PRA on horizon scanning, so that we can really peer around corners and be prepared. And we also work very closely with the FCA and the TPR, so Nazika was here earlier, and others through the wider implications framework. And again, understanding what are the issues of common ground between us and how can we peer around those corners, pick up signals so that we can be ready, so that any risk that is in the system, any failure that emerges from that, we're ready to serve as soon as possible.
So we've had a couple of questions in that sort of take that risk angle and have particularly focused on the different products that are covered, and should high risk products, crypto and other products be covered by you? Do you have a view on that, or do you say that's for the FCA to give us our remit?
Yeah, we have to be agnostic on that, so that's not in our gift. But obviously we work collaboratively with the FCA as they go through their own thought processes. And that's why we focus on preparedness. So once the level of risk is decided by our regulators, then we make sure that we're ready to respond to that in the event of firm failure, as will the rest of the regulatory family.
And in terms of the levy, obviously you've had that engagement with CEOs, you've heard some of the industry concerns around their contribution to the levy. Obviously that is not, the funding sort of mechanism is not within your gift, it's a matter for the FCA. I suppose what is in your control is actually how the levy gets used, how efficient you are as an organisation. So and obviously the latest data is that for next year the levy is coming down. How are you really focusing on getting value for money for the levy?
Yeah, I guess stepping out a little bit, it's all about how you frame it. So FSCS's work is all about, or the levy funds FSCS's work, and FSCS's work is all about building confidence and trust in the sector. That in turn creates financial stability, which creates conditions for growth. And so one way of looking at the levy actually is that it's a very powerful lever for long-term prosperity. And I think in terms of the level of the levy, you're right, so that's not something that's necessarily been in our gift. So we tend to concentrate on what we can control. And that's all about being a responsible steward of the levy. So we are acutely aware that we are managing money that's been given to us by those who fund our work, many of whom are in this room. So that's about managing our costs very effectively. It's about being able to demonstrate that we're driving productivity very effectively. It's about improving our organisation very wisely. So I gave a couple of examples at the beginning with your first question, Andrew, about how we've sought to do that. But again, if we're investing, we need to be very wise about and thoughtful about how we do that. And perhaps more than anything is we have to be excellent at recoveries, because our recoveries capability is probably the closest thing we've got to a polluter pays type model, because we're essentially collecting funds from those who have failed, taking those funds and offsetting them against the levy of live and prospering firms. So that's really important. And I mentioned before that kind of 88p of every pound goes against the levy. The other 12p goes to customers, of course. But the majority of that money goes against future levies. So it's absolutely vital that we can demonstrate to you and to our other levy payers that we are the very, very best that we can be at recoveries, because that's where we can put value back into the system for the markets to do with as they wish.
And how does the evolving nature of claims reflect in your thinking? We've had a question in and around actually how, you mentioned already about the change in PPI, but how does your analysis of those claims coming in reflect how you're managing the business going forward and how you're managing that levy?
Yes, so the mix of claims is something that we've been taking very seriously over the last few years. So it's not just happened this month, it's been happening over the last couple of months or so, a couple of years. And I think it's made us really reflect on the skills that we need in the organisation. It's made us really reflect on the pace at which we can get claims out. Obviously, the more complex claims there are, it's going to take us more time. It takes us more time to get data back from providers because of the complexity. And I think especially as far as the skills that we've needed to bring into the organisation, I think I may have mentioned some of the calculations are becoming quasi-actuarial. So again, we're having to work a lot harder to create the conditions in which people can thrive doing that kind of work. So we've really had to be thoughtful about how to position ourselves in the market, about our own value proposition, so that we can bring in the right skills. And some of the skills actually are quite rare in the market, working on the kind of complex compensation calculations that we have. So we are in transition as far as that's concerned, and I think that's why it's fascinating. When it's easy to come up with an automation agenda for things that are fairly simple,
yep.
But when things are complex, what is the scope for automation? What is the scope for productivity? When so much is about making sure that you've got the right accurate outcome and the right fairness. So we're very thoughtful about that as far as the strategy is concerned. It's a good question.
So we've got a minute left, but I suppose my final question is sort of, you've been 18 months, 20 months in the role. What would success look like in the next 20 months? What do you hope to have achieved by the next 20 months? And if you're sitting here again in a couple of years' time, what would success look like for you?
Certainly, I think as far as our core metrics are concerned, I want to be able to demonstrate to those who fund our work that we've delivered on our promises as far as our claims volumes are concerned, that we're being an effective steward of your levy, and we demonstrate that by maximising our recoveries, and that you can see that we've driven productivity. We're doing more with the same or more with less. And also we have got some transformation activity going on as well around digitising our insurance platform, So it's very important that we can take some processes off manual and into digitisation for our insurance customers. And also to demonstrate that we've got a really compelling strategy that levy payers such as the members of the IA can look at and say, actually, we recognise that, you're stepping in our shoes, you're trying to create value for us, and we can see where the common ground is. And I think in a year's time, I'd love to be able to demonstrate through the metrics that we've created value for your members as well as, of course, for customers.
Excellent. Martin, thank you for outlining us the journey you've been on, the journey you want to take, as an industry, we're looking to support you and help you in that journey. But thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you.